Howdy, y'all. Got the Bulldog on the channel. I just got off the phone with a customer, and it's one of them lessons in life where a simple misunderstanding can get pretty involved. That's why it really pays for you to have a good relationship with your customers. What actually transpired was I worked on a vehicle. I called them up and said, hey, I got this thing done, and this is what I did. And they said, okay, to one of them. And then when I said I did the other, wait a minute, you just did that. No, I didn't. It hadn't been done before. Yeah, you did that, just a few months ago. And I get under enough stress that I can forget things. But usually, I don't completely blank out on vehicle repairs. Usually I can look at it and tell if I have done something to it. In particular, this vehicle had been a new buy for the customer. So the last time it was in was the first time I saw it. We even talked about that. But here's the deal. The part that I put on there sounded similar and performed a similar function than the one that I did earlier. It just worked on two different systems. Now, the reason that there was a misunderstanding, not only did it sound similar and have a very, very similar name, but it was the same complaint. It was a vacuum actuator. One of my earliest videos, I worked on a vehicle and I put on a vacuum actuator for the vent system inside the truck because the air wasn't blowing out in the right spot. Only the second bad vacuum actuator I've ever seen on a dash, but that happens. Now, that is a vacuum actuator for vent control. Now, the misunderstanding comes when I call a customer and tell them I put a vacuum actuator on the four-wheel drive. Well, you just did that. No. Well, they were civil about it, but they were very sure that I had put on a vacuum actuator, and I had, just not on the four-wheel drive system. But what really tripped the idea in their minds was one of their complaints from before was that the four-wheel drive didn't work. So that stuck in their head. The four-wheel drive didn't work. I put on a vacuum actuator. The four-wheel drive worked. Well, the story goes, when I started working on that, I had actually had him just stop by because I assumed it was going to be a vacuum line off. Guess what? It was a vacuum line off. But that didn't fix his problem. It made some functions work. And then we got the vacuum actuator because it had before that it had a control unit bad because I wasn't getting vacuum to the actuator, and I fixed that. And now I was getting vacuum to the actuator, and it still didn't work. And I checked the actuator, and the actuator was bad. So we got an actuator. He ended up getting it himself from a salvage yard on the third try. Colder winter, salvage yard guys, I couldn't get it because the place that I get it from, they didn't want to go outside and do it. Period, point blank. They just didn't want to go out in the cold And no matter what, you can't tell them enough, you can't send them enough pictures for them to get the right one. They got to get the wrong one a couple times before you get the right one. So I finally got that and I installed it. And now the actuator works. But the problem still exists because it's got a broken door. So it was a long, drawn out process. And I did a video of it. I think the first week I started the channel. That was when I did my channel intro. I was actually leaning on that truck. But, these people, they were really nice about it. And, it wasn't one of them things of, we're not paying for this because we just did it. No, they just, we figured that'd be under warranty because you just did it. Well, they forgot to look in their records, but I looked in my records. And for the last several years, I had not bought a vacuum actuator for a four-wheel drive. And I do have my ticket from where I worked on this truck before, where it's listed right there, vent control actuator. And we had talked about it being a vacuum actuator. Okay. I just called the customer and say, hey, I think we've got a misunderstanding here. And I look back at my records. I don't find anything where I bought that part. And I do have a ticket from where I put in a part, vent control actuator. And he says, oh yeah, that I'm thinking about that now and remembering that. And I told him, yeah, when you first came out, we had a vacuum line off. That's why your four-wheel drive didn't work, because it is vacuum controlled. And just a slight leak will cause it to not work. It had a line clear off. I had an extra day of working on it because I put that brand new actuator on there and it still wouldn't engage the four-wheel drive. Okay, so I had to go through all of it over again. I had to pull the battery out, pull that actuator up, put the battery back in, start it up, run it, and I had a vacuum gauge on it, and I could tell the vacuum was low. It was there, but it was low. And what I did was I pinched off the line that went down to the transfer case, and my vacuum jumped up. Okay. So that means in that system, there's a leak. So I went down underneath of it, and I pinched off the line that come out of that switch that went over to the actuator, and my vacuum went up. Okay, so my leak is over towards the actuator somewhere. And I went to the other side of the vehicle and I pinched off the line. I'm just using my fingers. I've got vice grips they're attached. But I pinched off the line that went over to the other side of the vehicle, and hey, my vacuum went up. So, okay, it's underneath there somewhere. Gosh dang it. Well, I pulled the battery out, pulled the actuator out, stood it up in the corner again, put the battery back in there, put everything back in, started it back up, and I could tell it was right there on the end. Right there where it hooks up. Gosh dang it, what the heck's going on? And I undid the clamp, pulled the line off, and pulled my thumb over the hole, and the vacuum went up. Okay, what's going on? Now I looked at the clamp, and the clamp was all deformed. It's one of them, just standard old hose clamps for the small hose, and it's flat on one side and it goes around. Then you tightened it up, and what it did was it pulled the hose crooked when you tightened it up. I put it on there without a clamp, it engaged just fine. Well, it's going to slip off, so I went scrounged around and found one of them squeeze clamps that goes like on an evap line, and stuck it on there. Put it back together, checked it, it worked. Put it all back together, double checked it, it still worked. So, all right, we're good to go. That was when I called the customer, and we had the disagreement, and that's resolved now. I'm going to go home and figure up his bill, and he'll come out and pay it. He'll be happy because it's fixed right. It is. Give it a little time, And, as a mechanic, don't be so, you know, combative when it comes to customers that say, "Well, I thought we did that." Just double check yourself. Don't get all militant on them. Maybe they won't get all militant on you. If they get militant on you right off the bat, yeah, that might be a customer you could lose. Customers, same way. Don't get all militant with your mechanic because he can afford to lose you. They people any mechanic can get pushed around enough, they're just going to say, "Okay, you can go somewhere else. I don't care," because it's not worth their time. So I just figured I wouldn't do anything else except for just riding down the road here. So tell you what, like, comment, subscribe, use your little buttons down there, hit the bell notification, hit the share button, and share it all over the place. And I will talk at you later.